Welcome to this week's live ASX strategy session. Great to have you with me as always. I think we've got a fair bit of interesting stuff to go through today. Bit of movement in the ASX 200, some of the commodities starting to move around a bit. So a lot of good stuff to have a talk about as we go through the segment. As always, everything today is general commentary only. No personal advice is given. Now, having gone through and said all that, I think we jump straight into our charts. Start off with, as we usually do, the ASX 200 and what a difference a week makes. So this time last week, the ASX 200 was locked in a tight trading range. It had been there for about 3 weeks, and now we have a breakout and a strong rally. And we were talking about this last week, and just put some lines around this this trading range we were talking about. And there's the upper boundary and got the lower boundary there. So it was a contracting range. We call that a triangle range simply because it looks like a triangle. You've got the contracting downward and upward lines. And so now we've got that breakout to the top side. And ranges are interesting formations because they act a bit like a spring. So you get the price coils up within the spring gets loaded, and then when it breaks, the breakout typically sees the market then move in the direction of the breakout, and that's pretty much what we've seen occur over the last few days. And so the big question here is that the end of the pullback? Is that the end of the pullback we've been sitting through since the April high? And is the ASX 200 about to move on up to new all-time highs? And I think that's certainly a possibility. It's a possibility you couldn't rule out whatsoever. The ASX 200, it's had a 5.6% pullback. And look, these things are fairly routine within the course of an upward trend. Upward trends often have these pullbacks of, say, 3 to 5% thereabouts. And it's also come back to the 100-day moving average, a little bit below the moving average, which is okay, which is, again, isn't out of the ordinary. And upward trends are periodically revisited. They periodically revisit the 50-day and the 100-day moving averages. So from all that perspective, what we've been seeing is quite normal price action. But I think the big question here is, has there been enough consolidation to support a new advance? And my take on this is that I think we're in for more consolidation. I just don't think that this pullback lasted all of 3 weeks, from high to low, works out to about 3 weeks. And I'm not sure the 3-week pullback is enough time to consolidate a 5-month advance. So from that October low through to the highs, that's about 5 months. And yeah, so 5 months, 3 weeks, it just doesn't seem proportional to me. So that's why I think that this may continue to have a bit more time in it. So yes, this has been a good week, no doubt. This has been a good week for the stock market, for the ASX 200. But we've got to remember that corrective periods also have up days. They also have up weeks, and we sometimes get up months within a consolidation. And a rebound doesn't necessarily mean a new bullish phase is underway. And you've only got to look back to last year to see what I mean. So, like, just look at this period through here. We had up months, we had up days, we had up weeks, but we had sideways consolidation for many months. So I'm not suggesting that's exactly what we're heading for now, but I think some form of consolidation would fit in. And I'll give you another example. Another interesting example happened in 2019. So I can find these examples pretty much everywhere. They're not hard to find. But I think what's interesting with looking at past examples, they don't give you a roadmap for what's going to happen by any stretch, but they just give you an idea of what could happen, so you're prepared for some of the possibilities. So before I just jump back to 2019, just take in this price action. So take in what I want you to take in. I want you to take in the big rally, then I want you to take in the recent decline and the current rebound. Now picture that. Now let me just duck back in time. and find what I'm looking for, and this is what I'm looking for here. Okay, so we've got the big rally, not dissimilar to what we saw over the previous 5 months, not dissimilar in time either. Actually, so it looks like around 5-6 months, but that's just a coincidence. So similar sort of rally, initial fall, fairly quick, few weeks. Then we got the rebound, not dissimilar to what we're seeing now. So if you remember that price action from just recent weeks, it's not looking that dissimilar. Look what happens next. Down the market goes, and then up, and then it continues to consolidate, and then it leads on to going on to higher levels. But the point is, from where we are now, that's the sort of thing that could happen. Again, this is not a prediction by any stretch. I don't know what's going to happen next, but it's just to show how something that looks like it's about to go off to new highs can take another turn and can turn into a more protracted consolidation. So that's kind of where I think things could play out over the coming weeks. And the thing to remember is that consolidations, they're just messy periods. They're inconsistent. They chop back and forth. They cause confusion. They cause frustration. So I think we just should be prepared for potentially for a few more twists and turns over the current week. It may not be a case of just onwards and upwards from here on in. Could happen, but don't be surprised if there's more, as I say, more twists and turns to come. I was asked a really interesting question through the week. It was in the media. So I was in the media during the week, and the journalist said, look, do I take seasonality into account? And seasonality is a really interesting thing. So seasonality is where some months of the year or periods of the year are better than others. The thing with seasonality, I think, is that there's definitely these seasonal patterns. And the middle part of the year is typically not as strong as the beginning or the end of the year. So we're going into that period where seasonality does tend to have more subdued stock market performance. The thing with seasonality is it's a bit like a barometer in that it works sometimes, but it doesn't work all the time. So I don't think we can trade off using seasonality. And people often will talk about sell in May and go away, where the market does sell off in May, but then in other months they won't talk about it because it's just not happening. So it's one of those interesting things to keep in mind. And it would kind of fit around that scenario we've been discussing, where we do get some more consolidation coming into the market. But I think seasonality is a lesser consideration. For me, it's all about the price action. And I think an important point to make here is, of course, that I don't know what is going to happen. None of us do. So I think for me, it's all about having a strategy that can manage a variety of scenarios. And the strategy I'm using with my portfolio, as I talk about all the time, it's wide trailing stops. And I think if you're using a strategy which employs those wide trailing stops, I think it really does. It gives you the best of everything. It's a bit like having an each way bet. So take, for instance, I'm wrong about this potential for consolidation, and the market actually that now from here just takes off and rallies. Well, if that were to happen, well, I'm still in the market and I do well. If the market does in fact consolidate and it does chop back and forth for several months, well, I'm covered for that scenario also, because the wide trailing stops will hopefully be able to see off that consolidation, keep me in for when and if, I should say, if the market then turns higher thereafter. And of course, if the worst case happens and the market does peak and start to roll over and decline, well, then I've got an exit point. So it's giving me that coverage for all those different scenarios. And so I think that's something to always consider. Like, what do you do if each of those scenarios unfolds? And by using that approach, I'm avoiding selling my best stocks unnecessarily. And I think the key to making money from big trends when they occur is to stay on them. And as long as you can stay on those trends, rather than letting uncertainty cause you to cash out your best stocks early when we go through these periods, I think that's where you can really do well over time in the markets. Now, I'm going to move on to the small orders in a minute. I've got commodities, going to go through gold and silver and oil and uranium and copper. I've got a couple of stocks to look at, but that wraps up the free section. So if you're not a strategy session a member, just click the link below. Come on in. It's low cost. I think you get a whole lot of value from coming in, and yeah, look, hopefully some ideas you might not have otherwise had. Now, okay, let's go over and have a look. We'll start with the small.